Mays, and I'm a pediatrician and a member of the faculty of the Yale Child Study Center. I've had the pleasure of being associated with the Haskins Lab ever since my coming to Yale, and the pleasure of knowing Dr. Whalen ever since that. What brings me to make this recording is some work that I've been doing in Tennessee around helping families in very, very socially isolated rural areas of Appalachia build more skills around family resilience. And we're doing that work by encouraging literacy skills around narrative and storytelling, with the idea that stories are absolutely central to communities. They're central to how children learn about themselves and their families. That brings me actually then to how did I come back to the Haskins Lab to meet with Dr. Whalen after our meeting so many years ago. And I was interested in Dr. Whalen's interest in endangered languages and whether or not there was a domestic focus on Appalachian dialect and the languages of Appalachia that are so much in danger of vanishing because of much of the isolation, because of much of the stress of the region. We began to talk about that. It was the first time that I'd actually knew about Dr. Whalen's interest in language and healing and language and the impact on health in all aspects. And it made enormous sense to me. I was also reminded of his commitment both to the culture of language, and to the preservation of language, and to understanding the impact of language broadly. So we began to talk about Appalachia, the language, and I was sold on the language and health project. But let me return just by that to talk then about something of this project in Tennessee that we call Discover Together. The idea of Discover Together is that families learn about their community, and in so doing they also bring themselves together. And that language and storytelling is inherent to what it means to be human. We tell stories that link ourselves, that link our children to our parents, that tell children about who came before them, that define our communities. Communities are made up of people that share stories and traditions. We know an enormous amount now in the health world about the impact of social networks, of people being together, of community health on actual physical health, and know that social isolation, poor social networks is actually probably as toxic to long-term health, long-term physical health as high blood pressure, high cholesterol, all of those things that we typically associate with poor health. But poor social networks is one of the more toxic health-related factors. And while we don't always think about it, language is one of those ways of bringing people together, of increasing, of enhancing social networks. You share a story with someone. You share a story with your child. You share a story with your neighbor. And you have begun to actually be linked socially. So what we're seeing in Discover Together, just by focusing on these literacy defined as narrative and storytelling skills, is that children and families in this very small area of the Cumberland Plateau have suddenly, over a course of a year, become much more interested in their communities, taking pride in their communities, wanting to do more in their communities. The children are leading their parents to places that were in their own backyards that they hadn't gone to, but they're telling stories about them now and learning how they relate to their family, their neighbors, their teachers. Teachers in the schools are starting to talk about how the children in Discover Together are more curious, they're more engaged in learning, they're more interested in what's going on around them. This is all about language and culture, and it's about the pathway to the effects of language on health. By increasing social networks, one improves health. One increases social networks by this kind of strategy of learning about stories, of learning about the people around you. Not only Appalachian culture is not only the only culture across the world that is vanishing, that is losing its particularities, its granularity, its stories and its traditions. There are many, many cultures. And that's why this project is especially important. It's important for the preservation of language, but also important for calling our attention to this very critical link between language skills, communication, and health. I really, really support this project and am delighted to be a part of it.